Welcome to this.
I needed an apple to have the energy to lecture at midnight.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes,
Perfectly.
yes, you are audible.
Thank you. A very good morning to everyone. Welcome to the day 2 of the International Conference on Emerging Practices in Contemporary Language and Literature. We are extremely pleased and honored to have the guests and dignitaries from across the globe. Without further delay, let's dive into our exciting day ahead.
Okay, I take a pleasure to introduce our guest. Dr. Gerald Kupchak has been a professor of psychology at the University of Toronto since 1974. He was president of 3 international organizations, including the International Association for Empirical Aesthetics, Psychology and the Arts of the American Psychological Association, and IGEL, the International Society for the Empirical Study of Literature. He received the Rudolf Arnheim Award in 2010 from the APA and the Gustav Fechner Award in August 2018. From the International Association for Empirical Aesthetics, both for distinguished research and service. His research interest includes aesthetics, design, and imagination processes, emotional experience, and social communication. He published The Aesthetics of Emotion, Up the Down Staircase of the Mind-Body in 2016, Landscapes of the Imagination in 2024, both with Cambridge University and Press. Hello, sir. We are looking forward to hear some insightful words from you.
Let's hope I have some. Can you hear me?
Yes, we are audible, sir.
Yes, we can hear
Perfect.
you.
Okay. So we're starting a little early. You know this, huh? Normally we're going to start at 9. We're starting at 7, or at 7 minutes to the hour. But no problem. All right. Okay. So I just want to make sure everybody's available. Okay. So here we go. My lecture is titled Building Bridges Between Psychology and the Humanities. And I'm doing it against the background of your conference title, Emerging Practices in Contemporary Language and Literature. And I see that it's sponsored by the Institute of Engineering and Science in Indore, a place that I love and have visited and lectured. So congratulations that the engineers have the wisdom to support the literary people. Now, of course, there are challenges to online lecturing without direct contact. We've all experienced this during the COVID pandemic. I cannot really see your face to determine whether my lecture is getting across. I see all manner of backs of people's heads, and I see myself in the remote distance. So I'm lecturing, so to speak, to your souls. Of course, I could lose my job at the University of Toronto for saying such a thing. As we know, psychologists don't really have any souls. But I've been a professor for 50 years, more than 50 years, and it's a little late to fire me. So let's put some cards on the table. Now, I want to just explain what I'm going to do here, because as professors, we have to be responsible people, and we have to put some ideas on the table and pretend that we're smart. But my real job is to communicate with you and to talk to you, in a sense, in a personal way, from teacher to teacher. So whether one is in Canada or whether one is in India, we face the same kind of realities. And here's something that's happening in our world. And the question is, are the humanities dying in North America? And this is a real fact that we've confronted. Departments are being closed down. Departments of the humanities are finding all manner of justification for their existence, and as such are losing their souls. And what I mean by justification is they're no longer necessarily seeing themselves as dealing with the humanities, but they see themselves as dealing with practical issues, and they're all trying to pretend they're applied, so the university does not shut them down. Now, how can we save or resurrect these departments? My point is, universities should recognize that scholars in the humanities take cultural artifacts seriously, both in terms of creation and reception. In essence, they deal in cultural history. Learning to think about relations between cultural products and culture is foundational for the humanities. In essence, the humanities helps to build citizens. The humanities offer us an opportunity to address the meaning of contemporary society for us and for other groups. Although I'm a professor of psychology for more than 50 years, in truth, I build a bridge in my own life between my interest in the humanities, whether it's literature or art history, and psychology. So let me explain some things to you. All right. First, I want to talk about a foundation of the humanities, and I'll do my best to speak clearly and to speak slowly and not to bore you, because at a distance it's very difficult to actually maintain contact with people and keep them awake. Here's the point. I want to talk about foundation of the humanities, and I want to make a point that's clear, that both relevant in our history and in literary studies. I want to contrast everyday and aesthetic reception. By everyday reception, I mean reading the newspaper, just reading an informational magazine, as opposed to reading stories. And as we all know as teachers, that's a transition that students have to make when they engage in interesting exploration of literary matters. So in everyday reception, only the subject matter is relevant. In everyday creation and reception, the form and content are relevant. So here's the contrast. In the pragmatics of everyday life, I just have to see the facts. It's like going into someone's house and counting chairs. I don't have to see the colors. I don't have to feel the textures. In fact, the subject matter emerges from the form. The sound and relation between the two is fundamental. So in aesthetic reality, in teaching people in art history, the challenge that is faced is having them see what the picture is about, read what the story is about, understand what the poem is about, while at the same time giving them a sense for the meter and the sound and the pace and the color and the texture. And that's the fundamental difference between everyday and aesthetic dynamics. Everyday dynamics are simply about survival. Only the subject matter is relevant. Aesthetic reception requires that we slow down the process and appreciate the style as well as the subject matter. This applies equally in the literary and visual arts. So a challenge that we have as teachers is to have people slow down what's automatic in everyday life. They just read the newspaper, they read the sports section, they see what the facts are. They don't necessarily have experiences. Our goal is to give them that experience. And it's a fundamental challenge because students are trapped in a pragmatic life. So now I want to, having established this contrast between everyday experience in the arts or everyday experience in reading and aesthetic experience, to go into more detail about aesthetic experience, and particularly certain cultural traditions in the West. And Ashok and I have talked about the link between Western literary traditions and literary traditions in India. So here's a fundamental contrast in my side of the world. Where does the meaning reside? Do answers to the problems of meaning just reside in the text and related cultural constraints, or are readers permitted to go outside the text and address its meaning in a flexible way? So the students reading the story, we just want them to focus on the story, or we want to take the story and have them think about it in relationship to their lives? Now, in relationship to this question, there are two contrasting approaches to literary understanding in the West. There's a long tradition and a long history in the West that contrasts the British Enlightenment, French neoclassicism on one side, and German Romanticism on the other. The Enlightenment had a kind of very practical, I mean, you guys had to, shall we say, suffer the British for a long time. You understand the meaning of pragmatics. The Enlightenment had a formal quality, trying to manipulate the imagination of audience members by representing a shared world. in a political context, that means going into another's country and telling them this is the nature of the world and this is the reality that we share. It's not to be questioned. So we see that literary thinking and political thinking are very close cousins. French neoclassicism similarly emphasized the three unities of time and place and action that shaped the power of dramatic illusion, and that's the point. We are creating an illusion. We are giving people the facts that lead them to believe that the world means this and that. And if we give them enough facts, and we do it in a certain way about the time and the place and the action, we will take control. Now, the 20th century variation of this, in the battle between the formalists of new criticism versus the reader response group. New criticism did not permit speculation about the intentions of the author or even the psychology of the reader. So we've all gone through this in school. We've all encountered poems where we wanted to think about, well, what did the poem, what did the author, the poet mean, and how do I feel? And the teacher says, no, we're just looking at the rhyme and the rhythm. We're just looking at the alliteration. We are simply looking at the formal properties of the literary text. And if you want a good grade on your exam, then that's what you have to give us. German Romanticism didn't like this idea of tricking spectators. For them, the goal of theater, I'm talking about Goethe and Schiller, the goal of theater was to reflect social realities and enhance social awareness. By selecting critical moments, the playwright could take us into the mind of a character so we can appreciate the unity of action in a scene. And it was the Germans who translated Shakespeare, because August Schlegel thought that Shakespeare provided scenes about reality, that if people could understand them, they would understand the world in a deeper way. In the 20th century, reader response theory was flexible and favored the same thing, the idea that interpretations of readers are important in groups of readers. Before I talked about Friedrich von Schiller, I want to point out that years ago, in my, when you're a professor for 50 years, you go through a lot of different kind of experiences. And I was invited in the 1980s to join a group in Germany. And these were professors from Germany and the Netherlands who were angry at their high school teachers, who told them that there's only one way to understand the text. And if you want to get a good grade, then you have to listen to what we want. But these professors felt that the way we understand the text will depend on who we are. It'll depend on the era in which we're thinking about the text. Meanings of texts will differ according to the era. They were all angry at their high school teachers. You could hear it in their discourse. So this was a very important organization for me to become part of and ultimately president, because you could see that they emphasized the role of interpretation, the value of participation. So let me try to reconcile. Here are the two teams. One team says the text has certain formal properties, and your job as a student is to understand those formal properties. Now, the other team says, wait, I'm writing it, I'm reading it, interpretation is part of my life, so it's okay for me to do it. Friedrich von Schiller, who lived 1759 to 1805, gave us a hint of how best to reconcile this in his aesthetic book, Aesthetic Education. He addressed the need for a balance between the British Enlightenment emphasis on reason and the Romantic need for cultivating sentiment, reason and sentiment, logic and emotion. How do we bring these two together? Schiller said that we need to develop this capacity for feeling without neglecting human rational capacities. We all have this challenge ourselves. How do we balance our attempt to understand logically how to navigate our careers to help our students find a place in life. How do we balance that with our own emotions of having struggled and succeeded or failed? Or how do we balance logic and emotion? Sheeler talked about the play drive. And the play drive helps us externalize our frustrations, externalize our reality, give form to what's inside to make it shared with others. We must learn to leave the narrow confines of the present in which mere animality stays abound in order to strive toward an unlimited future. It was the German romantics who had an understanding of fantasy and imagination. So in other words, we have to learn to balance reason and sentiment in the poetry of our lives. I mean, it's true for all of us. It's not just Sheeler writing in the late 1700s, early 1800s. It's true for all of us. We have in our careers, we have certain realities we have to accept. We want to publish in a certain way. We're members of certain departments. There's a logic that we have to succeed in. I add as a digression, the smartest people I've met in my life could never be professors because they could never knuckle under to the demands of the system. They could never knuckle under to the demands of publication. There's a formalization. So we have to learn to balance reason and sentiment in our lives. It's from Sheeler that we acquired this concept of éloignement, that poets should not write in the moment of strong emotion, but in the tranquility of distancing recollection. And this is a very interesting aspect of what literature is and poetry is. It ain't just the facts. It's a standing back. And when we have the concept of aesthetics, of unity in diversity, what is unity in diversity? It's just not a newspaper. We have to tell a story in such a way that brings people in. Just I have to deliver a lecture at such a great distance, not actually being with you, to walk among you in such a way to draw people in. It is the nature of aesthetics to bring unity to the diversity of the narrative. But Sheeler said, if you want to tell a story, you don't just give the facts, you stand back. And you're more discriminating regarding its substance. So following Sheeler, I'm advocating a balance between the two approaches. We want to appreciate the era within which a work was created because its context reflects challenges faced during that time. We understand Shakespeare better, we understand the assorted novels better if we understand the politics of a period. Of course, it's just obvious. It's not a particularly profound statement. And the style of the work is shaped by the atmosphere of a culture within which it was created, contrasting formal constraints or existential anxiety. How is the feeling of a society embedded in a narrative? Part of my own career was shaped as an undergraduate when I saw paintings by Kirchner, who moved from Dresden to Berlin. And in Dresden, he was painting nice curves. And in Berlin, it was all harsh angles. And I said to myself in the third year undergraduate, wait a second. The harsh angles fit with the fact that he's talking about being anxious and alienated. And then my brain woke up. That the poet, the painter, their work are simply not mechanical undertakings. They express the feelings of the individual. And looking more closely at how the brain relates to paintings, I could see that the areas in the brain that create things that are fuzzy, like impressionist paintings, like romantic poems, or hard-edged, like mystery novels that take somewhere, or paintings with hard edges that can be easily discerned. Thus, enlightened formalism helps provide a context within which a work is created and performed, along with an appreciation of its structure. We need them both. Formalism is not enough. Just understanding the rules is not enough. We need to have our students feel it in their souls, find a grounding for what we teach them in their lives. And on the other hand, readers in any era can resonate to the shared cultural themes of a work or digress into personal experiences that are unique to them. Is this not a foundation of our success as teachers? I saw a student today, my only student ever in 50 years, to come to me and say he'd been homeless. A kid from Africa, from Ghana, he'd been homeless. And I said to him, take the homelessness and turn it into a career. And that's what he did. He went out and he lectured on homelessness to students who'd been homeless. And the organization that has paid him to do the work could not be happier to have someone at the University of Toronto talk about his own suffering and how he succeeded. So it's not just a story. It's the lived story. It's the embodied story. It's the experience story. So the issue in literature is the balancing between the structure of the work itself, whether these are nuances of the poem, formal qualities of rising action and catharsis and resolution of the literary piece, and the individual who finds direct meaning in it, who feels what you're teaching. Is it not true that our successful lectures are founded on an ability to put something on the table that the person could take and live in their own lives? And that brings to the theme of how is psychology relevant to anything to do with the humanities? The minute you say, oh, Kupchak's going to talk about psychology, we have Freud, we have sexual narratives and sexual deviance, etc., etc. There's a prurient element. I treat it in a very different way. I decided to become a psychologist when I was very, very young, 12 actually. And what is the nature of a psychology? Psychology is about relationship. Psychology is about the foundations of my creating a painting. It's the foundations of writing a story. How many people in the audience kept a diary as young people? How many people in the audience wrote little stories when they were in grade 4 or grade 5, and the teacher says, that's a beautiful story, because we shared our lives. So psychology is two phases about building a bridge between ourselves and the work in a creative act. And psychology is about reading a work that's personally meaningful to us. Have we not all gone to movies, such as a 007 spy movie, and we're kept along by the action on the surface, and it's interesting and exciting or pleasing, versus other movies that present complicated family situations that may be not relevant to us? And so you go with a friend whose family has traversed divorce or poverty or escaped from tragedy. You haven't, but your friend who goes to the movie found the movie deeply moving. So this is an important question. Are we on the surface of experience, having some pleasure, oh, it's very sweet, I like the sweetness, or excitement? Or does it deal with deeper themes? Themes of happiness and sadness, themes of fear and anger, see, that are directly relevant to our struggles as people. So psychology is relevant to your literature in terms of how deeply we enter into it, and how deeply we enter into it has to do with its resonance for us. And so I have a metaphor here, engaging in an archaeology of the self. If they say, well, we should close down your literature department because literature is stupid. And I say, wait a second, before you do that, you have to understand that people find themselves in stories. They're not alone because of the stories they find. Someone else has lived it, or they can take their fantasy into it. So an archaeology of the self means psychology is relevant to literature, because in our interaction with literature, we find ourselves. We look through the layers of our lives, the lenses of understanding, to understand our world. So it is an interaction. between ourselves and the literary product of acts of interpretation. And here are two themes. Did you feel good in reading it? Did you feel good at the movie? Or did you think about it and understand it later? Are you on the surface or are you in the depth? And so engaging with literature provides us with an opportunity to open a dialogue with ourselves. What have we survived? I had lunch with a student today. I'd only met him for 5 minutes before guiding him through this whole process where he created courses and he's out there working with kids who'd been homeless. I was amazed by him. What have we survived? Has it helped us understand the story? Does the story make us feel less alone? And so we have the theme of authenticity. What is the value of engaging with literature? We are not alone. We can be our authentic selves because I can sit in a classroom with another student who finds meaning in a work in a very intimate way. Why? Because the story reflects episodes from our lives. For 30 years, I've done the following. I've had students basically write the stories of their lives. I suggest you consider trying it in your classrooms. I tell my students the following. Pick a topic, whatever you like. In the 30 years, 20 students a year, believe me, I've seen it all. It would shock you. Abuse and all manner of narrative. But I want you to go find 4 people who've lived it. And each person tells you 2 stories. That's 8 stories. And my undergraduates write 100-page papers. Because at first we tell the story. It's the beginning of a narrative. It's the beginning of a poem. It's the beginning of a novel. But now I want you to tell me why. Why did you pick that episode? What does that episode mean to you? And so the student works with the respondent to find out the foundations of why they picked it. And what happens? The person who tells the story is empowered. The person who tells the story does not feel alone. It's like the confessional booth of life. Is this not the foundation of our writing? Those of you who had little books, little stories that you wrote for yourself as children, are these not the basis for life? And so creativity is a kind of confessional booth of life. And then we develop the kinds of skills that are needed for storytelling. There's a whole world of storytelling in North America. I didn't even know. And we all know friends who will go on, and hopefully it's not the essence of my lecture, but who go on and on about what happened during the day, and you're dying of boredom. You can't get off the phone or the Zoom meeting or whatever fast enough. And then there's the storyteller who selects just those moments to suck you in because you cannot find the resolution and you're waiting for the resolution. And I've done research on this. The uncertainty draws you in. And is this not the success of a successful lecture or a successful story or a successful friendship or a successful relationship? Where we begin to draw people in by the mystery of our lives. And is there not a similarity between the mystery of our lives and the mystery of the stories that we can share with others and what we call literature? Because successful storytelling picks a theme that's meaningful to an audience in such a way that it's shared and in such a way that brings enough uncertainty that we struggle to find meaning. So what's the point? Why is psychology relevant here? Psychology is relevant because it helps us with the archaeology of our lives. It helps us understand what we've survived. It helps us be authentic in our life and reflect on episodes in our lives. And here, I'm not going to shock you. I'm not going to shock you. Because we live inside the illusion of our bodies. And we imagine we are the person who I'm looking at sitting here in the classroom, or you're looking at Kupchak giving the lecture. But in fact, I'm all the Kupchaks I've ever been. I'm all the layers I've ever been. You are all the layers you've ever been. You just don't think I can see it because I can't. But there are times when we're 6 years old or 8 years old or 12 years old or with all the layers we are. And sometimes people are trapped in those earlier layers because of abuse. And they can write a story about it. They can write a story about an adult who remembers the sexual or physical abuse of their childhood, and someone else reads that story and quietly to themselves says, "That's me." So is this not true that there's a close relationship between us as these layered beings and stories as layered narratives that invite people in? And for some people, they're relevant, and other people, they're not. So we talk about a kind of regression in service of the self. I go back to my earlier age to find myself. And then, as we saw during COVID, we have all kinds of constraints and opportunities because COVID changed the way we taught. COVID changed the way students learned. And as we all know, I don't know if you've had the same experience I had, but as students came back to the university after COVID, they thirsted for the presence of others in the classroom. And then another thing that I discovered and published about. Some people just want the story of their lives to be in the classroom with others and share their experiences. And others are just detached. In sum, for that part, we have opportunities that we can avail ourselves of. We have opportunities in the stories of our lives and the stories that we read to find authenticity. We can engage. And what is the purpose of taking the literature courses? What is the purpose of teaching the literature? On the one hand, to find ourselves, but on the other hand, to engage in active reflection. What does the story mean? I decided to do what I'm doing when I was 12 years old because I was a Bible scholar. And if you study the Hebrew Bible as I did, the words unpack into layers of meaning that you search for. And I became enamored with that kind of search. Is that not true with how we see ourselves? That we can become enamored or engaged with the search for the fundamental meaning of our lives is not the reason for taking literature courses to engage in active reflection. Not just about the book, not just about the poem, but somehow it seeps into our lives. And there are certain poems that we love, that we write, and certain poems that we love. Why are we so attached? Why am I so attached to that film? Why am I so attached to that poem? Because it is an expression of my soul. Because I have that kind of intimacy with it. The theme of the poem is about the theme of my life. But the way it's told is the glue of my life. It brings in my emotions and it releases my emotions. I don't just like the poem. I don't just like the story. I am one with it. My emotions are emerging with it. The character in that story, whether it's the mother or the child, is me. Our identification with characters in films, our identification with characters in novels is a basis for intimate attachment. It's why we go back to the movie again and again. And there are aspects of the movie that are unresolved. There are aspects of the story that are unresolved. We don't just read the story because it makes us feel good. That's the surface. But there are stories that are challenging to us because there are stories that are narratives of our life. And what happens when we can meaningfully engage with this? It's just like I met the student today who's had wonderful success by taking his homelessness and transforming it into a career by helping other students, other children tell the stories of their lives, opening a door for them. Which leads me to the thinking eye and the being eye. The thinking eye plans your career. All of you who are sitting there, and all of me who are sitting within myself, have planned and struggled and studied and strategized and have been lucky as the thinking eye who is pragmatic to wanting to fulfill goals and needs. And we've extended not just into our career, but into our work. In the aesthetic life, the thinking eye reads books and attends movies that remind us of our everyday life, that reflect the strategies of our life. The thinking eye is the foundation for your success. And you had to learn it. The number of people I've met in my life who are successful people because of their struggles, not because of their brilliance. I told you, the smartest people I've met in my life could never be professors because they could never adjust, as we all know, to the rigid and rigorous demands of our universities, the arbitrary demands for publications, the arbitrary demands for teaching, the 5,000 arbitrary demands. They couldn't do it. Doesn't matter how smart they are. So we have all learned to survive. We have been embedded in the narrative of life. Makes sense. And an additional thing it does for us, I go to the being eye. Being, and it's very cute. Thinking eye, EYE, being eye dash I. I was particularly happy. I did this with a literary professor, Gary Leonard. We thought we were very cute. The being eye helps us find your identity and meaning in the world around us. It helps us identify a self that has all the succeeds, all the skills that help us survive in our life. And in the aesthetic life, the being eye finds plays and films and books that resonates with the challenges that he, she, they have faced, bringing them to a higher level of understanding while vicariously fulfilling our needs and dreams on the stage. So the being eye explores literature in search of a deeper self to enable emotions that find a cultural route of escape. What's the point in the end? The point in the end is that we enter literature, we read literature as part of the thinking eye and the being eye. The thinking eye gets the A, because the thinking eye is able to analyze the meter and find the characters and identify the direction of the action and the rising action and the crisis and the resolution. The being eye can figure it out. The being eye gets the A. See? The thinking eye figures it out and the being eye survives. The being eye finds itself in the story. The being eye builds a relationship to the story. What's the point of my today's lecture? What's the point? The point of today's lecture, because your suffering is almost over, that our goal is to reconcile the thinking eye and the being eye. And there's an entire, I could go on, but I get to sleep at some point and you guys get to survive Kupchak at some point. But we can see this the entire history of media. But media give us information and provide films that we can embed ourselves in, and yet we can also learn about ourselves. So here's a quick summary of today's narrative. Universities are closing down humanities programs. And they are closing down humanities programs. I won't even mention Mr. Trump, God help us. But they are closing down humanities programs because they do not see them as valuable in the same way that an accounting program would be. And they are wrong because they don't understand that the act of reading stories, the act of understanding characters, the act of finding a pathway to success is fundamental to life. And so in my story to you, I said, look, this is everyday life. We have goals in everyday life. We try to survive. But aesthetic life is different because the aesthetic work is a carefully constructed event that sucks us in with rising action and denouement and resolution. The same thing in film, the same thing in stories. And paintings gives just that fragment of the frame where everything is intensely present. And I pointed out that when it comes to looking at a text, we have two traditions. One tradition looks for the logic. The enlightened tradition, the narrative manipulates us, just like a 007. We're following the car. Will it happen? Will it crash? Will it not? Will they catch the crook? Yes or no? And the other one, the German Romantic tradition, goes to the unresolute aspects of our life that sucks us in, that helps us find out who we are. And so in the end, I said, that's all about psychology. Because on one hand, psychology is about survival. On the other hand, psychology is about knowing. And we have to do both. We have to understand the narrative. We have to see how it unfolds. We have to understand the layers of the sound and the work and the speed that makes something a poem. And yet, in order for us to go back to the poem a second time, it has to be meaningful to me because I feel it. In the same way that you feel your closest friends, you understand each other, you develop an intimate relationship. What's the point in the end? The point in the end is that the thinking I, EYE, and the being I, being/capital I, are complementary. Because without the thinking I, you wouldn't be sitting there. Because you wouldn't have had the grades to get into the school, to get the position that you have to teach the students. So we must teach the students strategy. But if we only teach the students strategy, then what have we done? We have created practical people who can be successful. But if we created students who can look into their own histories, the layered histories of their lives, and feel resolved, we have both of those jobs. So in sum, in the end, a balanced life as a teacher requires that we teach students how to analyze structures of literature, but they have to understand the agency, that they are the people writing the poem. They are people that are writing the story, and they are people understanding it. So in the same reality that you have as teachers, I have it teaching to you, to give you a narrative of logic that at the same time is personally meaningful. Thank you for your patience for the 35, 40 minutes of my story. And if you have any questions, somehow you can ask them. And if you go to ResearchGate, go to the website ResearchGate, you can find my books there for free. Just download them. See, what could be simpler? They're all sitting on a little shelf behind me. Even my imagination book, Don't Tell Cambridge, but people don't become professors because they expect to be multimillionaires. See? So I simply share the knowledge there with you. Go to ResearchGate and if you choose to write me at Gerald.Kupchik, Cupchik, not CK, it's not Kupchikin, Gerald.Kupchik at utoronto.ca. I will write you back with such speed, you'll assume that your mother had written to me saying, write my partners very quickly or else they'll feel hurt. So thank you for your patience. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. And thank you for asking me to do this talk. And I see the sound of clapping. Ask. Is there a question? Ask me. If not, I have the bliss of my bed waiting for me.
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
Sir, you are getting from voice.
I hear everything.
Sir, very good morning.
And good evening, both of us. The
Okay,
other side of the world. It's not the other side of the
Yeah.
world for nothing. Go
okay. The
ahead.
phases of sun are like the aspects of psychology between two. The psychology of knowing and psychology of learning, right?
Correct.
Okay, sir, very
But
well.
we have to admit our ignorance on both sides. It's easier. It takes the pressure off.
Yes. Sir, very well said. It was actually a very good learning in your session. All of us are from the Humanities Department here, and we have the participants across the globe from the various disciplines. But the meaning, what I understand from your lecture is we have a common objective to achieve. We have common goals, of course. But before we proceed for the same, everyone should understand the psychology of an individual. Why we are doing, how we are doing, and what's the goal we are pursuing for. Am I right, sir?
And we are all the same.
Yes,
I'm a
definitely.
professor for 50 years. I am no different from my first year students. We all struggle to find meaning in our life.
Very,
And the
very
literature, the encounter with the literature and the struggle with the story gives me rehearsal opportunity.
definitely, sir. Sir, I have only one query to ask.
Yeah.
Like whatever we see nowadays in the mindset of youngsters, they are dragging towards the wrong path very fast. They catch the things incorrect. The correct things, it takes a very longer time to accept and adapt and adjust, right? So what are the ways to make them or to bring them to the right track? Whether we talk about the classes, whether we talk about the students, whether we talk about our own children, whatever, whosoever, the youngsters I am emphasizing especially upon. Like we see they commit suicide at the early age of 9, 5, you know. So the scene in the world which is going on, they are taking drugs. Okay. So where we are missing, being parent, being teacher, being a social responsible person, okay, being a national and international political parties leaders. So what's the fault where we are committing a mistake? Because we are the leaders, we are the technocrats, we are the teachers. We can bring a lot of changes, and that is what we are working for. But might be we are somewhere misleading. We are not misleading them, but we are misleading ourselves. The ways we are opted to teach them, theoretical part, practical, but we are missing somewhere in the practical approaches. So what do you think? Where is the communication gap? Where is the communication gap between teachers and students? Where is the communication gap between students?
Here's a horrible truth. Are you ready?
Yeah, definitely.
They're smarter than us.
They're smarter
Now,
than
what
us.
do I mean? What do I mean? See, I studied literature when I was a kid. You're teaching it. We understand what we're talking about. Except for one thing. We didn't have TikTok as children. When I was a kid, I mean, think back to when you were younger. If I would have understood, when I was at Michigan, I graduated in 1967. If I would have understood where things were going technologically, I would be a billionaire. Because we would own everything. We never imagined what there is now. Here's the point. Literature are words on a page. It's passé. I hate to tell us the truth, because they can turn on 5,000 different forms of media. I do research in the area. They don't just need words on the page. They got unending things on the screen. I'm writing a book with a kid now. I'm 77. I'm almost dead. He's 28. His family does the top quality virtual reality in Europe. We're working together. He's helping me understand the new age. What's the point? The point is meaning is meaning. Literature has a certain kind of structure. Movies have a certain kind of structure. All the different media have a certain kind of structure. And it's an interesting question to ask our students. Okay, I want you to read this short story. Now I want you to tell me how this short story is present if you were going to do it in one of the new media that you take for granted, that for us seems strange. They're in a different world. We need the, I apologize to us. We need the humility to catch up to them. We had a meeting today at the university about all the different ways the students can cheat. They have ways to cheat we didn't even know were options. Or we would have cheated. Look at this. Look what they're doing. It's shocking. What's the point? The point is to consider, I said it with love and respect, that literature provides a certain form of knowledge. It has a certain content and a certain form. Films have a certain form of knowledge. They have content and form. But what's about television? And what's about virtual reality? What's about all the different kinds of new media that are out there that the children are involved in. And here's the last point, the attention span. The movement from the analog to the digital, they ain't got the attention span that we did as children. Everything happens more quickly. They change more quickly. So expecting them to slow down means that we take them to the mountains, we take them by a stream, and they just sit. And they will be in shock. Because they'll hear the water burbling and the little rocks, and they'll hear the birds. They will hear all the things that they don't hear. And here's the last point. Shklovsky, the Russian film theorist, talk about defamiliarization. The children are so used to movies and TV and video games and the 5,000 things that did not exist in our life that to take them and put them in a place where there are no distractions could be the biggest blessing. So it's not that we're right and that they're wrong. They're living in a different world. We need to catch up to them or share with them or ask them, okay, so this is a poem here. What's like this in your world? And listen to them. There are dialogues that we can have. Makes sense. In other words, a little humility never hurts. We think we're smarter than the children. Shh, just, we need to wake up to the fact that they have their own secrets, as we did as children, that they have more channels to do it. Is that reasonable look? So, we just have to go with it. How can I be a professor for 50 years? Can you imagine? I'm a professor for 52 years and I'm not bored because I'm hanging out. Because I'm always interacting with people who are bringing new things into my life that require me to struggle to build a bridge. And that's the title of the lecture. Building bridges, the psychology of humanity. We need to build bridges to our children. We need to build bridges to our students. And stand on the bridge together and look over the side. A nice poetic metaphor. Reasonable. That's a good story. Remember, it's just as we both know, it's easy to give the lecture. The questions afterwards, heaven help us, we need assistance. The questions are always more fun than the lecture, and they're more challenging. So I thank you for the suffering.
Good. Anyone wants to ask? Anyone of you? Students? No one? Anyone of you? No?
If you don't want to talk, send me an email. I respond with lightning speed. It will shock you. Everybody's too shy. People are too shy. We should have the confessional booth of life, where you can go into the confessional booth and whisper the question. Then no one will know. No one will watch you. We can speak. As my mother said, here's the final point after my lecture. My mother was born in 1900, said, "A fool loves his own thoughts." Perfect. It describes the sun. A fool loves his own thoughts, but we can be fools together with no fear. That's the point. Am I forgiven? Am I permitted to go to bed now? Any more questions? Come on, one more question. Something challenging.
Any more questions?
Hi,
See, people
Jira.
don't wear.
This
Go
has
ahead.
been an insightful session. You have given wonderful inputs to the participants. I can see that my question is that we have off and on been discussing that you have connected literature, poems, poetry, psychology, the role of a creative writer, the psychology, and the professor is building bridges. Wonderful concepts. They are all innovative. The professor has to be professor innovative throughout. You have done
I have multiple sounds coming through my earphones.
let
I don't know if it's the heavenly angels. I'm not sure.
So my question is, Jural, that how can we look for identity of an author or the protagonist in a short story or in a poem, how do we connect psychologically and intuitively the identity aspects of an author?
Here, two answers.
Yeah.
The shocking answer, and it's almost one that gives us humility. Get ready. Feeling before knowing. You feel the intimacy with that author because they've expressed something in such a way that naturally permits your own emotions to emerge. It's almost like the psychiatry of literature. We don't need fancy words, but the story opened the door for your feelings to come out. So the identity and the relationship with the author is immediate and spontaneous. It's the same thing like when we meet people. There are some people that you meet that you become very quickly close friends. And there's some people that you meet that you discover, you and I have known each other for a while. There are some people you meet where you can work together. And there are other people where you cannot work together at all. And it's not because one person is smart and the other person is stupid. It's because one person lives in the world of the abstract and the other person lives in the world of the concrete. And I think it's relevant to you guys as teachers that we have to accept the possibility, not the fact, but we have to accept the possibility that stories have many different meanings, that there's not one meaning to this, the second group of people, not the formalists, but the reader response people. We have to realize that stories and poems can have multiple meanings, and there are different angles at which people can enter the poetry. And then that's the basis for the relationship. It's a relationship of intimacy that does not need words. Reasonable, as my father would say. Any more suffering? Man, you guys are too kind. I expect at least one letter where someone's going to say, "Okay, Kupchik, I wasn't going to talk, but I'm going to ask you this question in the email, and I will shock you with the speed of my response." I can have a real life instead of being a professor. Okay. Are you guys done with me?
Dr. Gerald is always very prompt and quick in responding. As
He
soon as
knows
it's
it.
email, the reply comes quick. And whether it be WhatsApp, whether it be on email, just drop a line and his will reply come through. And you will be set.
And one more thing, and go
Yeah.
to ResearchGate, and you'll find all the papers or whatever you want there for free. And it will shock you all the different kinds of things I've done with people because I work with people around the world and I work with people in a bunch of topics because I assume that if we're ignorant together, then we learn something. Humility is the only answer. Gandhi was not foolish. My story. So I thank you all for your incredible patience with me, with my narrative and my long-winded answers. I could have a real job. Anyways, thank you again, everybody. If you have any questions, just write me, Gerald.Kupchik, not Kupchik, and Gerald.Kupchik at UToronto, one word, University of Toronto, utoronto.ca, and I will respond. There we go.
Sir,
Thank you
your
again. Thank you again.
sir, your voice is so melodious that we just want to listen you once again. We are
It's,
expecting
it's,
more sessions.
it's the perfect way to put
Sir,
people
and
to
sir.
sleep. It's the melodiousness of sleep. First I'm melodious, then you're asleep. And I'm going to be up for the next 2 hours. I want you to know that because I've had to think logically. It's over. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning. If I'm asleep by 3, I'll be impressed. And I was supposed to fly to Florida.
Sir. Sir, definitely will share your email IDs with all the participants.
Thank you
Sneha
so
ma'am.
much. And remember the melodious soul. We are a melodious soul together. That's why I love to come to India. We are all together, we share the meaning, and we share the feeling. Am I dismissed?
vote of thanks, Dr. Rekha Dut, tender the vote of thanks. So kind of you, Dr. Jiral.
My pleasure, dear, always.
Thank you, sir, for your
I thought the
wonderful.
technicians
Thank you,
were dead.
Professor Dr. Deral Kupchik, for your insightful words and thoughtful expression. Your expertise in the field is surely a valuable input for us as it captivated our audience. Definitely, most of us would be downloading or getting your books after the session. So, our next speaker is Dr. E. Prema, who is an accomplished academician and associate professor in the PG and Research Department of English at Sri Meenakshi Government Arts College for Women, with over 23 years of dedicated teaching and research experience. She has been teaching into private institution for 10 years and in government service for 13 years. With her specialization in English language teaching, she has made significant contributions to the field through both pedagogy and scholarship. She has guided 2 PhD scholars and is currently supervising 4 more, reflecting her commitment to academic mentorship and research development. Her research interests span English drama, post colonial literature, gender studies, and the intersection of literature and society. Among her noted works are critical explorations of Elmer Rice's dramatization of social reality, Rabindranath Tagore's mystical poetic vision, and familiar and environmental themes in contemporary Indian women writers such as Namita Gokhale. Her recent research also delves into literary representations of identity politics and the ethical dimensions of literature, including detailed studies of Iris Murdoch and Sanjeev Sahuta. So, we would like to listen to you, ma'am.
Thank you, one and all. Especially my thankfulness towards the management and Dr. Rekha Dut ma'am for having invited me for the plenary session. And before I going to give my plenary lecture, I would like to thank Dr. Gerald Kupchik for having enlightened us by his scholarly deliberation. Thank you very much, sir. And now let me throw some highlights on Pens Against Power, the art of literary resistance in a fractured world. I think my research topic for today's that's why I have chosen this topic for my deliberation. To introduce, by the way of introduction, I would like to throw some lights on literature has served as a mirror and a weapon. We know very well that instrument and weapon is used not only to defend from the attack, also we can attack against the war. Not only countries to countries, region to region, and fellow human beings, and at times, sometimes we ourselves, that is self war is also happening. From a few days back, I happened to listen to chair the session in a conference at Gandhigram University, where the non-violence, that's Gandhian thought is non-violence, isn't it? There, I happened to meet a scholar, budding scholar, has revealed a inner turmoil, that is war between herself, right? For shaming of herself of body. That is, if they look fatty, they are ashamed of themselves, the body consciousness. So with this few notes, I would like to continue my speech. So in times civilization itself, in times social, political, and moral crisis, writers use their words, that is, their thoughts, well worded into words, to confront power, question norms, and inspire resistance, especially in the fractured world. So before I going to deep into my topic, I would like to throw some lights on this fractured world that is characterized by authoritarianism, inequality, war, climate crisis. Of course, climate crisis is happening because of the man-made crisis. If the nature is disturbed by human being, of course it reflects upon its own consequences. So then censorship and identity based oppression. So this presentation going to explore how literature becomes a site of resistance and hope, that is peace and harmony. So I would like to begin very popular and famous, of course, my own favorite writer, author, George Orwell's Animal Farm, especially. So it can be interpreted, that is, George Orwell's Animal Farm, interpreted as a form of resistance literature because it critiques the totalitarianism and the abuse of power, particularly in the context of the Russian Revolution and Stalinist Russia. They that time onwards, by using the allegorical narrative of animals rebelling against their human master, that is a farmer, human farmer, their own master. Uh, George Orwell exposes the dangers of unchecked power and the corruption that can result when the ideas of equality are twisted. So the novel's themes of rebellion, freedom, corrupting influence, warning against oppressive regimes, making it a powerful piece of resistant literature. Next, I would like to give you what is literary resistance. Okay, so resistance is any ways and means at any from anybody at anything. Okay, but here in our context, what is literary resistance? To define the use of literary forms to oppose, critique, or subvert systems of power. It includes fiction, poetry, essays, plays, memoirs. And resistance can be direct or subtle or global. Then, this resistance literature in the fractured world. And first and foremost things is political authoritarianism, next war, displacement, then censorship, of course. So climate crisis and global inequalities also we could add, and then most importantly erosion of truth. My dear participants, please note it, the erosion of truth also in this age of misinformation. Though we are living in a age of communication that is fast, quick, I can say swift, swift communication era, the global era of communication. In the same way, the erosion of truth also misinformation is going on in the same speed. So it is relevant for us to discuss such things. So to go on discuss about the objectives of resistance and refugee literature is to define and contextualize literary resistance and to examine historical and contemporary examples of writers challenging dominant power structures, and to analyze the techniques and strategies writers use to encode dissent. I would like to ask all the participants to kindly note it, the encode dissent, that is generally agreed one or official thing also can be disagreed by a single person. So we are living in a such a free world. So this is also one of the main objective of my research. Then, to explore how readers, educators, and communities can engage with such literature in transformative ways in order to bring the whole globe in a single umbrella that is free from resistance and refugee. Then, historical context of literary resistance, anti-colonial literature. First of all, I would like to give you some four main writers like Ngugi wa Thiong'o turned away from colonial languages to reclaim cultural agency through his writings. And then Soviet residents Alexander Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag Archipelago exposed atrocities hidden behind the propaganda. Then African American literary resistance, Baldwin's essays and Maya Angelou's poetry exposed the brutality of racism while affirming black identity towards the black identity. Then finally, Latin American resistance, Pablo Neruda and Gabriel Garcia Marquez used his lyrical and surrealist language to resist dictatorship and imperialism.
Prema ma'am. Prema ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes.
Dr. Rekha.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, so sorry to interrupt you in between.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to request you if you want to share your PPT because you have prepared.
Yeah, yeah.
Might be you forgot
Yeah, yeah.
to share it. So will you please share your PPT if you want to? Otherwise, you can continue with the talk.
No, 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 no. I have sent you, no, ma'am. If you.
Yeah, but we have an issue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll do,
Yeah,
ma'am. Just a minute.
Share it from our end. So please share it from your side.
Yes, it is. It is possible for me. Right away.
Yeah,
I'm doing it.
So you just do it. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, is it visible, ma'am? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah. May I continue?
continue, ma'am. Better if you can on your video so that we can see you as well.
Yeah, video. Yes. Okay. So, okay, forms. Okay. Very clear. Very clear. Okay. Okay. Yes. Pullakana. Layer. Next one layer. Clear? Okay. Ma'am, may I continue my speech, or I can come from the beginning?
No, ma'am, you just continue from here only.
Yeah. So, through literary forms, so uh, through literary forms also we can propose, that is express the literary resistance. For example, poetry is a medium that is concise and emotionally potent, often banned or suppressed towards the beginning. For example, Muhammad Darwish, the Palestinian resistance, can be a good example. And then novels, that is from the complex narratives that humanize the oppressed. For example, The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini, and then satire and allegory. That is, the literary resistance can be in a better way. We could say best way, since because it is subtle but powerful. For example, George Orwell's Animal Farm critics and totalitarianism through animal fable. And finally, I will mention the autobiographical memoir writing, that is the first person narratives that challenge dominate historical accounts. So let me point out the satire and allegory alone, because it is subtle and powerful. May I George Orwell's Animal Farm. That is why it is subtle and powerful means the exploration of corruption, especially it's prevailing everywhere in today's context. So the novel that time itself, George Orwell shows how power corrupts as the animals pigs who initially expose equality gradually become tyrannical oppressive, mirroring the very real world corruption that George Orwell witnessed in Soviet Union. So then, powerful because the very novel itself is a warning against the tyranny, that is the autocratic rule in the Soviet Union. And it also subtly attacks the so-called autocratic ruler, Hitler. So, by exposing the dangers of unchecked power and the manipulates of ideology, George Orwell's Animal Farm serves as a powerful warning against tyranny and the importance of vigilance in resisting oppressive. Then, thus, it is indeed the timeless relevance, the very themes of power, inequality, and the abuse of power that George Orwell explores in Animal Farm remains relevant to the contemporary political discourse, making the novel a timeless piece of resistance literature. That is why I would like to give some lights on this novel. So let me throw some case studies again from George Orwell, 1984, through his language as control, that's new speak, surveillance state, and rewriting history. And then Arundhati Roy's The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, resistance through marginalized voices, especially Kashmir's Dalits' queerness. Even a day before yesterday, we have witnessed something in the Kashmir, isn't it? So then Chinua Achebe's things fall apart, deconstructing the colonial narrative of Africa as primitive. So these are all the case studies of my discussion. Uh, and then I would like to give you some writer, that is the writer as an agent of change. Yes, how the writer, literary writers, will act as an agent of change. Yes, it is possible through pens. Powers can be changed, that is towards the progressive way. So writers risk censorship, imprisonment, exile for their work. I have example, Salman Rushdie and Holi Soyinka. We have witnessed these two writers and many more. Since I don't have any time to reflect upon all the writers who has the witnessed towards censorship and imprisonment and exile, I have given two writers, especially in this context of resistance and refugee literature. Then the writer is often a cultural conscience, that is, they know what is good and bad towards the culture, not a particular context of a nation tradition and culture as a whole, that is humanity, civilized cultural conscience here I mean to say. Then speaking when others cannot, especially power mongers and that bureaucratic people, when they shy opening their minds and thoughts, well worded, they shrug. Those writers, they are dare enough to come to explore and express, to lightening the darkness towards the world. So writers like James Baldwin became not just authors, one of the authors, but thought leaders and public intellectuals. So, in my view, those writers, literary writers, being they act as an agent of change towards the civilized, that is developing civilized humanitarianism, living, it's a best example, a specimen of living creatures. I could say they are best intellectuals than leaders, even political leaders, I could say. So because of through their pens they can change the whole world, means definitely they are the good real heroes and leaders, in my view. So then if there is a queries, you can ask me during the discussion session, and then I'll move on to how literature in today's fractured world, in the digital era, has made literary resistance more accessible and immediate, isn't it? Through Zines, Blacks, online stories, storytelling, these are all the example. Then literature response to global issues. For example, climate fiction. Amitav Ghosh, The Great Derangement and Racial Justice. Example, Tanekhi's quotes Between the World and Me, and Gender and Sexual Identity, Ocean Wang's On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous. So these are all the examples of today's fractured world. That is, it speaks on refugees and resistant literature. Really, it's a powerful thing. Then new platforms like spoken word, graphic novels, hybrid genres. So even when the people, the intellectual people, youngsters, if they are not um, uh, writing novels or fiction or poems like these, even through their spoken word, single word and terms and terminologies, and even through their graphic hybrid genres, they could express such things. So this is what the magical thing in the digital age. So definitely it will lead to the challenges to literary resistance. Of course, it has its own challenges. Let me throw something, some challenges to literary resistance. Is first thing is cooperation, that is cooptation. Resistance text turned into profitable products, losing the radical edge. Of course, it is there in the name of censorship and something like that. You know very well. Even in the publication sector, publication, when the papers are well-worded thoughts are expressed, some publication agents are not accepting to publish the thoughts, the powerful thoughts of the writers by censorship of their papers. So even they denied to publish certain papers because of the profit alone, that is in the commercial market. They denied to publish such powerful thoughts. So it is also there. Then censorship, authoritarian regimes, that is block publication or limit access. So we are all victimized something in our wards, research people itself, we could say see such things prevailing among ourselves. So then reader disengagement. In an age of short attention spans, long form literary resistance competes with entertainment culture. Then self censorship, writers afraid of backlash, violence, or doxing, isn't it? So even these are also prevailing among ourselves. So let me give some hopes and the future in spite of these all odds. Okay, in the odd and complicated, challenging world, it is there. It is hopeful. Things are also there towards the future. For example, the resurgence of independent publishing. Right? If publishing, that is the other publisher is denying, why don't you we ourselves self publishing is helps us to propagate such ideas, and the powerful ideas, the needy one. Then literary collectives and the grassroots storytelling. Of course, the other speaker today morning, he has highlighted such things. Then rise of translation initiatives making global resistance literature more accessible. Then literature is not static, that is, it grows in solidarity with the movements for justice. Like other thing is growing for the betterment of the civilization, and thus education as a tool to keep the flame of literary resistance alive. And to conclude, so before concluding, I would like to uh, give uh, highlight on backlash, that is black. I have mentioned a self censorship, writers afraid of backlash. No, why they are afraid means that it is a strong reaction against the political and social event. And then doxing is also another threat. That is the action and finding or publishing private information. They intrude some agents. So these are also the factor. So let me conclude. Ma'am, may I have some time, or let me go to the conclusion part? Can you give me 5 minutes? Hello?
Hello?
Hello, ma'am?
Yes, sure, ma'am. Please continue.
Yeah, yeah. 5 more minutes is there, I hope.
Yes, ma'am. Please.
Yeah, okay, ma'am. So let me come to the heart part of my presentation, my plenary session. That is, refugeism and resistance can be traced to the beginning of humanity as we have already discussed. However, this has become a major issue of the contemporary society since refugees and resistance crisis dominate the world at large, impacting the lives of millions of people in different parts of the world. I have my own anecdotes. If time permits, I shall also throw these stories also to you all people. And while people seeking refugee for various reasons existed even before the birth of civilized society, the present condition is remarkably different because billions of refugees have voluntarily or involuntarily given up the lands of their existence as well as their foreparents' legacies to seek freedom, identity, food, welfare, and in most cases, livelihood in a different nation, fleeting escape, persecution, or war. So, in this, the 20th and the 21st centuries have been marked by multiple wars. We have witnessed the World War III and the Twin Tower and wars against Pakistan, China border and whatnot, and ethnic exterminations or attempts thereof, social unrest, political suppression, racial discrimination, and religious violence. So these anti-human perceptions and attempts have resulted in huge number of people displaced either across their nation's borders, that is as a refugees, or within the same, that is internally displaced persons. It is called idps, that is originally becoming displaced for reasons beyond their control. The refugees often live in miserable conditions and with no future in sight. So, historically, intellectuals and non-conformists who undergo self-exile or forced into exile are also counted as refugees. So, through the works of commoners like blog writers and YouTubers and intellectuals, or through their successive generations, the voices of the refugees are being heard now easily. And these works are classified as refugees writings and resistant writings. And these experience based, real life experience based writings form part of current literary collections. So, politically, the refugees are counted as mere numbers, but narrative writings from these rootless people provided the world readers with deep insights into the working of this process and present poignant reminders to the factuality of such experiences. So, especially the issues related to refugeeism and resistance and its literary manifestations. Before going to conclude, I would like to give some terms and terminologies towards this resistant literature. Easily, we could revise the present presentation. That is, understanding refugeeism and resistant literature and historical perspectives on refugee crisis, rootlessness, homelessness, and closed borders, nationhood and statelessness, uh, narrative, the refugee experiences, and generational changes in representation, and thus identity crisis and memory is also the main part. Let me conclude. Literature, thus literature has always been a battleground between power and truth, factual truth, towards oppression and expression. And writers wield their pens not just to entertain, also to educate, in the name of by provoking, awakening, and inspiring them then and there. So, in the fractured times, literary resistance becomes more necessary than ever. So, let me conclude with this appropriate quotation of Toni Morrison. At least the function of freedom is to free someone else. Let us free whatever, whoever is not free. Let us free someone else. At least we can take an oath towards freeing someone who is suppressed in our real life situation. So let's all provide our younger generations whatever we inherited in the name of freedom. So we enjoyed the freedom. Let us give the same freedom to our younger generations by free from money and corruption, free from power and authority, and finally free from all euphemism. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insightful words.
Is there any questions you can ask the audience? And yes, ma'am. Otherwise, you go ahead, please, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your enlightened message for the literature. That was really a profound message that you have given through the literature. Now we will just pass on to our next speaker. Dr. Amar Vyal is an assistant professor of English at the School of Science and Humanities, VIT AP University, Amravati, Andhra Pradesh. He earned his postgraduate degree in applied research studies from the University of Lethbridge, Canada, and completed his MPhil and PhD in comparative literature at the Central University of Gujarat, Gandhinagar. Before joining VIT AP University, he held academic positions at IIM Indore and SRM University, Trichy. He is an ICSSR scholar, Shastri Indo-Canadian Research Scholar, and visiting scholar at the University of Lethbridge, Canada. In recognition of his academic contributions, he serves as a reviewer, editorial board member for various international journals, reviewing interdisciplinary research across multiple fields. His work has been published in Sage, Springer, Routledge, Vernon Press, and the University of Lethbridge Press, with forthcoming publication in NAIS, AIQ, CGNS, and other esteemed journals. His research spans North American Native Studies, American Indian Rhetoric, First Nations cultural politics, tribal governance, state-tribal relations, comparative literature, translation studies, and critical discourse analysis. Currently, he is leading an ICSSR funded research project titled The Cyberpunk Governance, Politics, and Security. Sir, I would like to pass on to you to just share your words on this occasion. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for the introduction. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you're
Yes,
audible.
yes. I think I'm not in a position to share the screen. Anyway, I don't have any PPT to share it with you. I will. Yes, 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 yes. Yes. can you visible the handout? Can you see the yes? Yes, yes, yes. Yes, thank you so much. All right, good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be here and to contribute to this vibrant dialogue on the future of interdisciplinary research in the humanities. Today, I invite you to consider television not as a passive form of mass entertainment, but as an active site of cultural, ethical, and literary productions. And I make this case by grounding television studies within the literature, a field that is itself undergoing and transformations. So you can easily see in the handout that I have drafted out the title for today's talk is Rethinking Television, Comparative Literature, Indian Media, and the Alternative Humanities. So, my talk draws on my research, television in India and the alternative humanities, and proposes that television in India is an archive of gender, ideology, and aspiration, a reach for comparative interpretations. I will,
Hello,
yes,
Abba sir,
yes.
kindly maximize your screen. Screen,
Okay. Just a minute.
thank you.
Just, can you please give me a, uh, just a minute. I think it's not. Oh, I will scroll it down. That's not an issue. Now you can see the points.
Yes, sir, we can.
Yes.
It's visible.
Yeah. So we will proceed through different sections, and each sections will be framing by a guiding question. So let's begin with the first questions. Why reimagine comparative literature? Okay, in today's world. Right. See, comparative literature, as Sauce and Bassinet have argued, began as a way to study text across cultures and languages. But today, text includes images, scripts, performances, and platforms. This field now finds itself in a pluralistic space we will call the alternative humanities. The alternative humanities involve disciplines that critique dominant structures, media studies, and digital humanities, post-colonial theory. They demand interdisciplinary tools and ethical engagements. So my the first point will be as comparative literature has evolved from text-based analysis to interdisciplinary cultural critique. The second point, the alternative humanities demand plural, inclusive, and socially responsive framework. So what exactly the ethical engagement which comes to the comparative literature? Comparative literature operates within the broader domain of literary studies and exists alongside alternative humanities, which in turn emerge from the interdisciplinarity. These fields are likely to evolve into a highly complex theoretical framework on a vast scale. The crisis in alternative humanities is encapsulated by the statement, if everything is the alternative humanities, then the alternative humanities are nothing. Right? Speaks to the dilutions of disciplinary identity when boundaries become overly expansive. So this concern is equally relevant to comparative literature, as in the claim, if everything is comparative literature, then the comparative literature is nothing. Media studies face a similar predicament as digital technologies, platforms, and cultural forms pervade every aspect of life. There exists a temptation to claim all social, cultural, and technological phenomena as part of media studies. But if media studies encompasses everything versus art, politics, infrastructure, psychology, aesthetics, algorithms, it risks becoming conceptually incoherent. The field must thus critically negotiate its scope. It means expansive enough to remain relevant in a digitalized world, but focused enough to maintain analytical clarity and disciplinary rigor. In this way, Lee warning becomes a call for media studies to reflect on its own boundaries and epistemological commitments. Defining clear boundaries and specific areas of focus within alternative humanities disciplines, including comparative literature, is essential for preserving academic integrity and core objectives. The absence of clear distinctions between these fields may result in excessive breadth, potentially hindering the discipline's ability, right, to to address complex interdisciplinary issues effectively. Establishing defined research boundaries is necessary to prevent the field from expanding to the point of losing its structural coherence. When constructing a theoretical framework for alternative humanities, it is necessary to adapt an open and inclusive approach that integrates diverse academic perspectives while remaining cognizant of the potential risks and limitations associated with unconditional openness and unconventional inclusiveness. So my point is that why do we reimagine, or why do we rethink comparative literature in today's world in the in the broader context of alternative humanities? The institutionalization of alternative humanities within the university system provides a necessary foundation for its structured development. This framework promotes inclusivity and collaboration across disciplines, securing recognition and supports for its principle within academic institutions. A well defined foundation is essential to prevent inclusivity and interdisciplinarity from being compromised by challenges related to academic recognitions. The first step is to establish the interdisciplinary scope of alternative humanities. The next step is to implement a system for a categorization and academic evaluations. Scholars, students, and academics in literary studies and interdisciplinary research play a crucial role in shaping and advancing the field. Their contributions are essential and highly influential for alternative humanities and its scholarship to thrive. A clear and impartial systems for classifying, evaluating scholars is necessary. One important question is how to define and organize various subdisciplines within the inclusive academic framework. Another challenge is ensuring that the scholars and their interdisciplinary work receive full academic recognitions, strengthening their academic standing and securing appropriate titles and teaching positions when entering universities or professional roles in related departments. These issues present ongoing challenges to the academic system as alternative humanities continue to develop. Let us embrace focused interdisciplinarity and openness that still values methodological clarity. These particular ideas lead us to the television, okay, which can be considered as a cultural text. So the second point, okay, what is the second point? The television, how television becomes a cultural text. So Indian TV serials like Malgudi Days and Hum Log act as aesthetic and ethical spaces. TV, the second point is that the TV is both a storytelling platform and a cultural institutions that shapes public consciousness. So, why study television through comparative literature, or why does Indian television deserve serious comparative literary analysis? A cultural framework for the analysis and criticism of television connects its function as a communication medium central to society with its role as an aesthetic object. Television operates as an excessive medium that employs storytelling to unify and critically examine a culture. This analytical approach focuses on interpreting specific messages and assessing their potential effects, grounding analysis within a narrowly defined communication framework. The complexities of images, the complexities of styles, the complexities of resonance, the complexities of narrativity, the complexities of history, the complexities of metaphor, which can easily direct attention towards content which is more precisely and according to some perspectives more objectively measurable. Unlike naturalistic observations or textual analysis, this particular method of television as a cultural text employs a predefined categories that facilitate more systematic measurement, allowing content categories to emerge directly from the text. These content categories frequently recur, or their effects correlate with specific behaviors. The emphasis on measurements reflects a deliberate decisions to conceptualize television as a form of communication rather than as an aesthetic medium. Right? The aesthetically, okay, says for example, the particular this approach is not entirely new, but its relevance remains significant. There is a growing recognition across multiple disciplines of the role of symbolic thought, communication, and actions. Numerous studies increasingly apply these perspectives to television analysis. This broader awareness facilitates more substantial discussions and insights into the role of television within the society. Television programs such as Malgudi Days and Hum Log provide insights into the cultural and social complexities of Indian life, functioning as, functioning as more than mere entertainment. These narratives construct liminal spaces, including villages and small towns, where characters engage with various dimensions of their lives while either reinforcing or challenging norms. The portrayal of these transitional spaces enables situational comedy and light drama to serve a meaningful function, subtly integrating widely accepted notions that shape social realities.
नहीं,
In
ये उससे मैम से हाँ वाईफाई से चल रहा है।
In Malgudi days, the fictional town of Malgudi serves as a mythic yet intimate space representing a cross section of rural and small town India. The episode, The Missing Mall, demonstrates this through the character of Thanapa, a village postman who delays a telegram announcing the death to allow a wedding to process peacefully. His emotional confessions. Okay, was it wrong of me to think of your daughter's happiness? This particular sentence, or this particular quote, or this particular scene from the episode renders the village not as a static backdrop but as a space where ethical ambiguity plays out. Here, institutions like the postal service are reimagined through local moral economies while revealing how modernity is reflected through deeply personal and relational structures. The aesthetics, gentle spacing, minimal music, earthly visuals show a slower, reflective temporality, encouraging viewers to sit with more complexity. By contrast, Humlog, there is another series, there is another series called Humlog, brings liminality into the urban domestic sphere, focusing on a middle class joint family navigating economic precarity and generational frictions. In the scene where Lallu, the son, okay, is a character from Humlog, defends his dream of becoming an actor. सपने देखना तो हर इंसान का हक है पिताजी. This particular sentence witnesses the emotional collision between individual desire and family duty. The cramped home space becomes a crucial of aspirations and anxieties, a site where the private becomes political. Hamlok's use of direct address by Ashok Kumar at the end of each episode also collapses the boundary between fiction and social commentary, inviting viewers to reflect on the larger cultural implications of everyday conflicts. where Malgudi Days leans toward allegorical storytelling rooted in local specificity. Humlock takes a more didactic, realistic approach, mirroring the concerns of nations in transitions through episodic serialized form. Yet, both series, in their own ways, highlight how television can serve as a critical space for negotiating normativity using minimal settings, whether a postman's road for family's living room, to explore ethical, social, and generational tensions. Indian adaptations of these programs preserved fundamental themes while situating interpersonal relationships and societal values within familiar yet distinct settings. So, this particular approach allows audiences to engage with narratives that offer both escapism and critical reflections on enduring social norms and values. The continued relevance of these stories underscores their cultural significance across generations. Similarly, we have programs such as Satyameva Jayate have helped in advancing discussions on social issues such as corruption, women rights, mental health, and everyday social dynamics. These programs ensure a balanced representation of perspectives and promote open dialogue within fictional or talk show formats. This Indian production reflects the success of similar Western programs and demonstrates the continued effectiveness of television as a medium for addressing ideological concerns. Television engages diverse audiences and fosters a sense of inclusion in social discourse. So, what we have to do, say, let me give an example. In one episode of the soap opera, okay, Kuch Rang Pyar Ke Aise Bhi, Sonakshi in that particular serial challenged societal norms. I'm sorry, challenge societal norms by pursuing a career as as a nutritionist. She encountered a significant resistance but ultimately secures employment to manage Ishwari's health. Traditional ideological criticism in this particular serial, particularly from communication perspectives, argues that personal and emotional narratives take precedence over social conflict within the dramatic framework. Analysis from this standpoint highlight how the examination of gender roles shifts from professional settings to domestic environments. The episode's resolutions encapsulate Sonakshi's struggles with identity and gender roles, as well as broader societal issues related to gender discriminations. The complete narrative structure, or the complete basket of this narrative structure, frames these conflicts in a conventional manner, which serves to diffuse, contain, and redirect critical discourse. This perspective remains valid, but it is necessary to acknowledge the audience likely empathy towards Sonakshi throughout the episodes. So this empathy plays a crucial role in shaping viewers' understanding of her struggles. Some characters attempt to dismiss her concerns, but the text itself does not. The concise half-hour format integrates multiple arguments supporting a strong feminist perspective, fostering a deep connection between the audience and Sonakshi's experiences. A cultural perspective offers an alternative interpretations of the episode. Popular culture, particularly Indian television, does not only respond to societal expectations regarding gender roles, but also raises critical questions about them. The episode's conventional confusion or conclusions does not negate the importance of exposing audiences to the complexities of gender discriminations. So there are, for example, A Rishta Kya Kehlata Hai initially focused on the romantic relationship between the protagonist. As they age, the narrative expanded to address themes such as family planning and career aspirations. Similarly, Kyuki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi began as a family drama but later incorporated contemporary social issues including women's empowerment and gender equality. So over the years, these series have explored diverse social issues and family dynamics. In India, the study of media, particularly through television, facilitates the exploration of diverse perspectives and underrepresented voices. So, how can we understand this analysis? So, throughout this analysis, it is essential to acknowledge and cite the diverse responses elicited by television imaginary, conceptualizing the viewing experience as the primary text of television. An inherently rich and multifaceted text positions the viewer as a bricklayer who collaborates with creators in constructing meanings. Viewers engage with television by integrating their values, attitudes, personal experiences, and concerns into their interpretations of the images presented. They select and process content to formulate individual meanings. Now, so let us now shift our, just let me take a little forward to focus from narrative to ideology and ask how television shapes and is shaped by gender roles. So you can see in the next, the third point in the handout is that gender representations. So advertisements and serials often reinforce stereotypes: women as homemakers, men as drivers. So shows like Kuch Rang Pyar Ke Aise Bhi and Contigo subvert traditional gender expectations through inconsistency. So how we need to understand that. So how do Indian serials and commercials reinforce or challenge gender norms? Like television commercials, okay, in today's century are a common feature of daily life. The prevalence of print advertisements further emphasizes the significance of scholars in gender and media studies. So this representation, see, commercial products, let me just give an example. Cleaning products advertisements frequently portray women as the primary caretakers of the home, reinforcing this stereotype that domestic responsibility are completely inherently female. Commercial products such as Lysol or Sweeper often depict women engaged in household cleaning, while men are typically absent or uninvolved in domestic tasks. This representation perpetuates the association between femininity and domestic labor. The brevity of television commercials and the limited attention spans of audiences necessitates the use of prominent and easily recognizable imagery to convey messages effectively. So says, for example, car advertisements exemplify this strategy by frequently portraying man as active drivers of powerful or fast vehicles, symbolizing strength, control, and dominance. Women are often depicted as passive passenger, reinforcing the perception that driving is a male-dominated activity. These representations contribute to the reinforcements of gender norms and social perceptions. These complete messages frequently contain stereotypes related to gender, class, and race. They enforce societal perceptions of marginalized groups through widely held but inaccurate and overly simplified representations. For example, food advertisements often depict affluent families consuming healthy or premium food products, whereas lower income individuals are portrayed selecting unhealthy processed foods. This
150 देगा.
this portrayal reinforces the stereotypes that wealthier individuals prioritize health conscious choices while those with lower incomes are associated with low cost and less nutritious options. This further entrenches class distinctions. An alternative approach to the humanities considers relationality, plurality, and cultural mobility as fundamental aspects of all historical periods, including pre-modern era. This perspective is clearly evident in global collaborations within media, such as the increasing intersections between Bollywood and Hollywood. The film Lunchbox illustrates this phenomena by exploring human relationships through a cross-cultural lens. It serves as an example of cultural productions that challenge the rigid boundaries and introduce alternative perspectives. While media frequently reinforces stereotypes, it also possesses the capacity to subvert them. The participation of Bollywood actors such as Priyanka Chopra in Hollywood productions exemplifies the transnational movement of cultural narratives and themes. Her lead role in the ABC television series Contico 2015 to 2018 demonstrates the global circulations of cultural identities beyond traditional national and industry boundaries. Text, ideas, images, metaphors, themes, modes, genres, and narratives reflect human creativity. Like humans, these elements transcends constructed, fixed, and predetermined boundaries, challenging exclusivist and essentialist perspectives on culture and
चरस
literature.
गांजा मेरे को प्यारा चरस गांजा.
Okay, so this practice sustains harmful and inaccurate associations between race and criminality. Similarly, Latin women are often depicted as passionate, fairy, and overly sexualized in popular media. Television shows such as Jane the Virgin and films such as Machete frame Latin women within restrictive one-dimensional tropes. These portraits fail to capture the diversity and complexity of Latin experiences. Such oversimplified representations contribute to the marginalization of minority communities by reducing them to singular stereotypes rather than acknowledging their multifaceted identities. So what we need to understand from these particular transitions, my dear friends, try to understand one thing that, but see, we need to understand one thing here about popular television shows such as Friends or The Big Bang Theory reinforce traditional norms regarding relationships, friendships, and work-life balance. These programs promote the dominant perceptions of urban life as aspirations. Let me give an example of Stuart Hall in his essay Encoding and Decoding in the Television Discourses identifies three different ways in which viewers interpret media messages, okay, from three different ways. First one is dominant, second one is oppositional, and the other one is negotiated. A dominant interpretation aligns with the prevailing ideological framework. For example, many viewers interpret portrayals of wealth and success in successions or billions as affirmations of capitalist ideals. And oppositional reading rejects the intended message. Some audiences interpret, okay, in the shows in the Hunger Games, sorry, films as critics of social inequality rather than endorsements of competitions and survival. A negotiated interpretation occupies a middle ground. Viewers of Keeping Up with the Kardashians may engage with the program while recognizing its scripted nature and consumerist messages, blending acceptance with critical awareness. These interpretive modes shape viewers' perceptions of others and their self-conceptions. The concept of television as a cultural institution is essential when examining the impact of gender stereotypes on self-esteem and society. Representations of women as homemakers in programs such as Desperate Housewives and men as stoic providers in Mad Men reinforce traditional gender roles which audiences frequently accept in the dominant mode. So who decides who see, let me ask you one question. The very sensationalization questions of these issues for entertainment frequently undermines the capacity of audiences to engage with these social problems in serious and reflective manner. So who decides what meanings are
जय
received?
श्री राम.
This brings us to the audience. So the next point is that the let me
जय
take you
श्री राम.
let me take you to the last points. children's media and video games. I think somebody is disturbing over here. Okay, so let me take you to the last, to the sixth point of the particular handout: children's media and video games. See, cartoons and games reinforce gender and power norms early on. Media literacy is key to addressing these influences. So my next perspectives will be based on children's media and video games. So how to understand all these things, my dear friends? So television and video games, how television and video games influence on self perceptions and behaviors. So media exerts a significant influence on gender socializations, particularly through television, cartoons, and video games. It shapes children's understanding of gender roles and identity formations. So cartoons frequently reinforce gender stereotypes. The Smurfs, for example, presents as Muffet as the only female character, placing placing her in a passive role such as a romantic figure. In contrast, male characters display energy, courage, and leaderships. The Flintstones, another video game, portrays Wilma Flintstone within a domestic and caregiving role, while Fred Flintstones engages in active and often aggressive behavior, participating in the program's major events. So we have Scooby Doo video game and cartoons positions female characters such as Velma and Daphne in subordinate roles, which with Fred taking the lead in solving mysteries. The show depicts Velma as intellectual but passive, while Daphne frequently assumes the role of a damsel in distress. So, video games reinforce gender stereotypes through themes of violence and sexualizations of female characters. The Grand Theft Auto is another video game series exemplifies the depictions of misogyny and violence. Male characters frequently present female characters such as prostitutes and strippers as sexual objects. The game permits players to commit violent acts against them, reinforcing harmful attitudes towards gender and acceptable behavior. So there is another video game, okay, called Mortal Kombat. So includes both male and female fighters as well, but the female characters often wear highly sexualized outfits, so their appearance emphasizes their presence more than combat skills. I will give you, let me take you back to the Indian television cartoon shows. So contrary to these Western examples,
चुप
so
बिल्कुल चुप
contrary to these Western
हिम्मत कैसे हुई तुम्हारी
examples,
बोलने की
Asian cartoons such as Sinchan and Chota Bheem reflect different but still problematic constructions of gender. Sinchan often portrays the mother, Misai, as a domestic figure burdened by household responsibilities and easily agitated by the male protagonist's behavior. While the father remains emotionally detached, this reflects a gender hierarchy within the family structure. Chota Bhim positions the male protagonist as a strong, intelligent leader, while female characters such as Chutki and Indumati support him in secondary roles. So, despite their challenges and capability, these characters receive limited narrative space and rarely take central actions. The valorizations of the male hero and marginalizations of female agency in these examples indicate that gender stereotyping transcends the cultural boundaries and operates through different narrative forms. So, television, cartoons, and video games influence children's self concept and perceptions of gender roles as well. So, this highlights the urgent need for changes in media representations to positively influence children's development and societal attitudes towards genders. So, let me take you to the conclusion: rethinking humanities through media. So, television is not just the opposite of literature, it is a literature in motion. Right, this is the argument that I'm making over here. Is television is not is not the opposite of literature. It is a literature in motion. It is serialized storytelling that engages with ethics, identity, and social transformations. Through comparative literature, we gain the tools to interpret television not just as entertainment, but as philosophy in narrative forms. So this demonstrates that the Indian television is a critical site of social reflection, is a critical site of ideological negotiation, and is a critical site of cultural experimentations. So it is a time we should recognize that humanities scholarships must include the study of screens, scripts, and serials. Let us therefore approach television with the same intellectual seriousness we bring to poetry or the novel, because in its frames and dialogues, its silences and excesses, television captures the pulse of society in motions. So, uh, right. So I would like to stop over here and open the floor for questions.
Hello, the participants can ask some question if any.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening session speech. Actually, it's not a question; it's observation. Actually, your presentation is a very authentic one, and real like situation has brought it out like case studies. So youngsters will be very much impressed by your um, presentation. Thank you very much. All the best, sir.
Yeah, because of the positivity of time, I couldn't explain other examples as well.
No issues. It's clear and impressive on the whole. Thank you very much, Amar Vayal.
Thank you so much for giving me a chance to speak before you.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir, for your diverse, insightful words. Further, I would like to extend my thank you to our speaker who has joined us from across the border and share their valuable and enlightened words. It is an immense honor to hear from such speaker who has a varied, in-depth research messages to share on literature. I would like to extend my thanks for our participant who has joined us on hybrid mode. Here we take an idea from our plenary session and continue with our technical session. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, do you consider online presenters also towards the selection process in the best paper, ma'am?
Yeah, we are
Or
continuing
offline
with
only?
Yeah, we'll be taking our technical session after break.
Yeah. No. What I'm asking you is whether you are considering online presenters also towards the selection process of best paper presentation.
Yes, ma'am. It will be having.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
Because
so
it will
much.
be encouraging for us. Yeah.
Definitely, ma'am. Yes,
Thank you.
we do have that. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.